You've been fed a myth since the moment you could walk, that some people are just meant to succeed, while the rest of us are wasting our time trying. And you've seen it. The classmate who never studied but still got straight A's. The athlete who made it look easy. The artist who never practiced but always shined. And no matter how hard you tried, you always felt one step behind. As if success was something you had to be born with. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever been told? Because in the shadows of the naturally gifted are the obsessed, the disciplined, the relentless.
Effort, dedication, work hard, because the talent is not enough anymore.
The ones who show up first, leave last, and get back up when no one's watching. They don't start ahead, but they finish there. This is the story of those people, the psychological deep dive on the ones who outworked the talented and proved that effort, when weaponized, becomes a force that talent can't stop. If this was all about talent, the world would look very different. Every gifted kid would grow into a world-class athlete. Every straight-A student would become a millionaire. Every natural-born performer would dominate the stage forever. But that's not what happens, is it? Because somewhere along the way, talent falls apart. It gets lazy, overconfident.
They're all trying to talk like me. They're all trying to be me.
And in the shadows, someone else starts working. They stay longer, study harder, push deeper, until one day they pass the gifted and never look back. This isn't about genetics. It's about bravery, and no one talks about it. Because we love the myth of the chosen one, the genius who never had to try, the prodigy who made it look easy. It's comforting. It means if we're not successful, it's not our fault. We just weren't born for it. But effort? That's threatening, because it means we could be better. We should be better. And if we're not, it's on us. So we build these stories to protect ourselves. We say Messi was always destined to be great, that Jay-Z was born with talent, that some CEOs are just built different. But what if they weren't?
I earned it. No one gave it to me.
What if success is just a mirror showing the reflection of your actions? And what if the people who look like they're naturally gifted only seem that way because they've been outworking everyone for so long? Because the truth is that raw talent fades, while work compounds. It doesn't matter if we're talking about soccer, rap, or billion-dollar boardrooms. It's not about starting strong, it's about refusing to stop. And we're about to prove it to you. 3 industries, 3 battles, 3 stories of obsession so intense, it rewired their brains and reshaped their lives. Starting with the one that's captivated the world for nearly 2 decades. 2 legends, 1 ball, and a rivalry that redefined greatness.
Me llamo Lionel Messi, tengo 13 años, re lindo. Estar allá, jugar en el Barcelona, pensar club más grande del mundo.
There's no debate. Lionel Messi is one of the most naturally gifted athletes the world has ever seen. From the moment he touched a football, it was like it belonged to him. His dribbling looked like poetry, his vision almost supernatural. At just 13, he was signed to Barcelona's youth academy. By 17, he was starting for the senior team. With Messi, everything looked effortless. He didn't chase greatness. It came to him. Cristiano Ronaldo, on the other hand, grew up knowing that greatness was something he'd have to take for himself. Born in a poor neighborhood on the island of Madeira, Cristiano's earliest years were shaped by financial, emotional, and structural issues. His father drank heavily.
When I speak about my father, I feel sometimes no words to explain what it was my father.
His mother worked multiple jobs. The home was small. The opportunities, even smaller. And this kind of environment leaves a mark. When kids grow up with instability, they often learn to chase control, to take ownership over whatever they can, because nothing else feels safe. That's where Ronaldo's obsession started. It wasn't about trophies, it was about survival. He didn't have the perfect system, or the right body type, or the early praise. What he had was rejection. And instead of giving in, he used it. He trained with purpose, studied with intensity, and transformed his body like a man at war with his own limits. He became the kind of athlete you don't see very often. Someone powered by the motivation to change their identity completely. He was building someone new, someone stronger and completely untouchable.
I push myself all the time to be the best. If I'm not thinking like that, I'm not going to be stronger than I think I am.
That kind of drive comes from hyper-controlled adaptive functioning, where people raised in chaotic environments build extreme discipline as a way to protect themselves. It looks like mere obsession from the outside, but on the inside, it feels like safety and control. It removes all anxiety and chance from the equation. Other athletes like Kobe Bryant shared this drive. Add this one to the queue if you want to learn more about Kobe's obsession with success after this video. Like Kobe, everything about Ronaldo became structured. His diet, his sleep, his recovery, his training schedule, even his visualization routines.
Sometimes I do it to visualize a few points that can happen in a game. I like to do it, and sometimes it's my subconscious that do it by himself.
While others trained to improve, Ronaldo trained to dominate. He didn't leave room for randomness. And that's ultimately what separates effort from obsession. Effort serves your goals while obsession consumes you. It breeds intense habits, and those habits breed extreme systems. The idea of good luck or bad luck isn't factored in at all. It's completely removed. Ronaldo rewrote his identity by rewriting the rules. While Messi seemed to glide through pressure, Ronaldo absorbed it and turned it into fuel. Where Messi created, Ronaldo calculated. He studied patterns, rehearsed outcomes, repeated scenarios until they became second nature. And like Kobe, he evolved constantly, shifting positions, mastering new roles, adjusting his game as his body changed. Not because he was bored, but because staying the same felt dangerous. Even the confidence you see in him, the flash, the fire, the iconic celebration. It's not arrogance, it's armor. A shield built through decades of discipline. Because when you grow up feeling invisible, the need to prove yourself doesn't go away. It just changes shape. And the result? One of the most iconic careers in sports history. Not because he was handed anything, but because he refused to be denied. Ronaldo decided who he would become, and then backed it up with work so obsessive that talent was never a main character in his story.
Are you the best footballer in the world right now?
I think so, yes. In my mind, I'm always the best.
But what happens when talent isn't just rare? It's the opposite of what you're supposed to be. When you're an outsider, mocked and ridiculed for even trying. One man didn't just break into a world that rejected him. He rewrote the rules of who was allowed to belong there. There was a time when raw skill ruled hip-hop, when charisma beat preparation, when talent alone could crown you king. And then someone broke the system. In the 90s, rap was a kingdom built on presence. Jay-Z could glide across a beat with nothing written down. DMX's voice could split a room open. Big Pun's flow danced over beats with terrifying ease. They didn't climb the ranks, they dominated them. You couldn't teach what they had. You either had it or you didn't. Then came a kid from Detroit with absolutely nothing. He wasn't cool, he wasn't connected, he didn't fit the part. And in the places where hip-hop was most alive, he was an outsider with the wrong skin color.
People telling me you don't belong, like you're not gonna succeed because you're this color, then you wanna show those people that, that you can and you will.
Eminem didn't start with the attention that Jay-Z, DMX, or Big Pun had. He needed to fight for it. And when he wasn't fighting the industry, he was fighting everything else. Poverty, instability, addiction in his home, schools that failed him and neighborhoods that didn't want him. Forget building confidence. Eminem was surviving long enough to try again.
To give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I know.
Where others leaned on instinct and talent, Eminem leaned on lyricism and hard work. He took words apart, memorized rhyme structures, rewrote verses until his mouth could move faster than his mind. His ability didn't emerge from a natural gift. It came from something more complicated. An intense, obsessive response to rejection. This was verbal overcompensation in its purest form. When you've been silenced long enough, the urge to master language becomes survival. Eminem needed to say things so sharp, so intricate, so undeniable that no one could ignore him again. He crafted his alter ego of Slim Shady for protection. Shady let him say what Marshall Mathers couldn't. The comedy, the violence, the chaos. It was camouflage. That's self-fragmentation. A response to emotional chaos that makes it easier to cope when your identity feels too fragile to face the world directly. Beneath the punchlines and shock value was someone dealing with constant insecurity. The applause never fully landed. The praise didn't feel safe. Because when your self-worth is built on performance, the silence between songs can feel like torture. That's what defined his work ethic. Every rhyme had to be better than the last, every album more technically complex. Even at the top, he feared the fall, and that fear? It kept him sharpening his blade. But it wasn't just fear that kept him going, it was memory. The echoes of every stage he was booed off, every person who laughed at his name, every door slammed in his face. His hunger wasn't for validation, it was for transformation. And eventually, the transformation worked. Eminem has become one of the most technically skilled rappers alive. People who once dismissed him now studied him. The genre and culture that once ignored him had no choice but to change shape and accommodate him. He didn't steal anyone's spotlight. He made one of his own, through repetition, pain, and an obsessive work ethic. Eminem's story is all about how far he was willing to go, how much of himself he was willing to tear apart and rebuild to earn a voice in a world that saw him as an outsider the moment he stepped through the door. And that raises a much bigger question. If someone so out of place could reshape an entire genre of music, what does that say about you if you're still waiting for permission? Because the truth is, outworking the talent doesn't just apply to music. It happens in almost every aspect of life. On the sports field, as we've seen, but also in boardrooms, business, and billion-dollar industries. One particular man who was never supposed to lead ended up building a global empire, and he did that by outlasting the very people who told him to stay in his lane. Because in boardrooms, just like on stages and football fields, there's a hierarchy, and at the top are people like Troy Alstead. Educated, polished, calculated, Alstead rose through the corporate ladder with ease. He had the pedigree, years in finance, an elite resume, a clean-cut look that made shareholders feel safe. He was smart, well-spoken, and by all accounts perfectly built for business. At one point, he was even named Chief Operating Officer of Starbucks. The next in line, the natural heir. But Starbucks didn't become a global giant because of Troy Alstead. It became one because of a man who started with absolutely nothing. And his name is Howard Schultz. Howard grew up in a housing project in Brooklyn.
The rent when I was a kid that my parents were paying was $96 a month for a one-bedroom apartment.
His father was a truck driver with a bad temper, no health insurance, and no safety net. When Howard was 7, his father broke his ankle and was fired on the spot.
And he fell on a sheet of ice and broke his hip and an ankle.
No workers' comp, no benefits, just shame. And that moment stuck. As time went on, Howard turned that shame into fuel. He didn't go to Harvard. He didn't inherit a network. He sold Xerox machines door to door and clawed his way into a small coffee company, and then saw something no one else did. A tiny espresso bar in Seattle with good beans and global potential. When the company's owners refused to expand, Schultz went all in. He raised capital himself, took enormous personal risk, and built Starbucks into a new kind of experience. Warm lighting, Italian names, a third place between work and home. But underneath that vision was a mind wired for obsession. Similar to Ronaldo and Eminem, Schultz was chasing the spotlight for control, not just success. The kind of control his father never had. The kind that could protect people from being discarded when they were no longer useful. And that mindset, full of purpose, pressure, and pain, shaped every decision he made. This is what happens when someone builds their future in response to a childhood where nothing felt safe. Troy Alstead, for all his polish, never had that fire. He followed the rules. Schultz wrote new ones. And when the moment came for succession, when it looked like Alstead would finally take the reins, he didn't. He walked away, quietly, almost like the crown didn't fit. And it was at that moment that Schultz returned, because he hadn't finished the story yet. And this isn't just about coffee or corporations. It's about what you're doing with your pain, your disadvantages, your lack of connections or confidence. Because the truth is, that chip on your shoulder, it can weigh you down, or it can build something no one else saw coming. But you have to make the choice. Howard Schultz made his. And when the world gave him no power, he built his own, and then made sure others would never feel powerless again. Cristiano Ronaldo, Eminem, Howard Schultz, 3 different lives, 3 different worlds, but the same internal war. None of them were born into success. They weren't the favorites. They weren't chosen. They chose themselves. And that choice came with a cost. Long nights, isolation, failure behind closed doors. But it also came with power. Because when you outwork the talented, you don't just level the playing field. You tilt it in your favor. Every extra rep, every extra page, every extra hour multiplies over time. More work means more attempts. More attempts mean faster learning. Faster learning means more output. It doesn't matter if it's football, music, business, or something completely different. If you keep showing up, you close the gap, and eventually you pass the ones who thought talent would be enough. So here's the ultimate truth. You don't need permission. You need repetition. You don't need to be chosen. You need to choose yourself. But when obsession becomes your compass, be careful not to lose control along the way. Click here to learn how cults and radical groups are able to turn passion into control and convince millions to follow blindly. Thanks for watching.